Thomas Reynolds stood at the observation window of Stellar Studios space station, watching Earth spin slowly below. His new movie was going to be the first big-budget film shot entirely in space, and nothing could go wrong. At least that's what he kept telling himself. Director Reynolds. A crew member's voice crackled through his earpiece. Emma Parker is reporting another problem on Set 3. Thomas sighed and pushed off from the window, letting the zero gravity carry him toward the transport tube. This was the third issue today, and filming hadn't even started yet. He grabbed the handrail and pulled himself into the tube, pressing the button for Stage 3. When he arrived, he found his lead actress, Emma Parker, standing with her arms crossed, her long brown hair floating around her head like a halo in the low gravity. Her face makeup was perfect for the scene, but her expression was anything but camera-ready. "The props won't stay in place," she said before Thomas could ask. "We set them up, and they drift away. But here's the weird thing. They're drifting against the station's rotation." Michael Brooks, Thomas's leading man, floated nearby, frowning at a coffee mug that was indeed moving in an impossible direction. "I've been in space before, for that Mars movie last year. This isn't normal physics, Tom." Thomas watched as the coffee mug slowly turned upside down, its contents staying perfectly in place despite the movement. That definitely wasn't right. The station's artificial gravity system should have prevented that kind of motion. "TORA." Thomas called out to the station's AI. "Run a diagnostic on Set 3's gravity controls." Running diagnostic, the AI's pleasant voice responded. "Gravity systems are functioning within normal parameters. However, I am detecting an unexplained temperature decrease in your section. Current temperature is 10 degrees below standard setting." Emma rubbed her arms. "That explains why it feels like a freezer in here. And listen. Can you hear that?" Everyone fell quiet. In the background, beneath the normal hum of the station's systems, there was something that sounded like whispering. Thomas floated closer to the wall, pressing his ear against it. The sound grew clearer. It was definitely voices, but he couldn't make out the words. "Maybe sound bleeding through from another set," Michael suggested, but his voice wavered. "Set 4 is empty today," Thomas replied, "and Set 2 is being renovated. There's nobody there to make any noise." The coffee mug suddenly dropped, artificial gravity seeming to return all at once. It should have shattered, but instead, it stopped an inch from the floor and settled down gently, as if placed by an invisible hand. The lights flickered, and through the brief darkness, Emma let out a startled gasp. When the lights stabilized, everyone stared at the large mirror used for the upcoming scene. Written in the condensation were 2 words: "Help us." "Tell me somebody's pulling a prank," Thomas said, his voice stern but his hands shaking slightly. "Jerry in effects, maybe." "Effects team is on Earth until tomorrow," Michael said quietly. "Standard rotation schedule." Emma pulled out her phone and started showing Thomas a video she'd recorded earlier. It showed her rehearsing her lines in front of the same mirror, but behind her reflection, there was something else, a faint figure in what looked like an old-style spacesuit, trying to speak. "I thought it was a problem with my phone at first," Emma explained. "But Michael saw something similar yesterday, and one of the camera operators quit this morning after reviewing footage from the test shots." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine as Kyore's voice came back on, sounding different somehow, almost confused. "Director Reynolds, I am detecting 12 additional life signs in Set 3. However, I cannot verify their source. This does not match any parameters in my programming." The lights flickered again, and in that moment, every screen on the set lit up with the same image, a starship's badge Thomas didn't recognize, and beneath it, a date, 2157. Through the whispers, a single word became clear enough to hear: "Remember." Thomas looked at his 2 lead actors, then at the impossible coffee mug, and finally at the message still visible on the mirror. He'd come to space to make history by filming the first blockbuster movie in orbit. Now it seemed history had found them first, and it had something to say. "Someone get me everything we have on space missions from 2157, he ordered. "And nobody breathes a word of this to Earth yet. If we got real ghosts up here, they're now part of the story." Jennifer Walsh hadn't slept in 24 hours. The production researcher sat in the station's digital library, surrounded by floating screens showing old news articles and ship records. Her eyes were red from staring at documents, but she couldn't stop. Not when she was this close. "Found something," she called out, her voice echoing in the quiet room. Thomas Reynolds and Emma Parker, who had been quietly talking in the corner, pushed off their seats and floated over to her station. "Look at this," Jennifer said, expanding an article dated December 15, 2157. "The U.S. Hawthorne, a research vessel that disappeared during a routine mission. But that's not the weird part. It came back 3 months later with no one aboard." Thomas leaned closer to read. What kind of research vessel? They were studying quantum physics, something about space-time manipulation. Jennifer pulled up another document. "Here's the interesting part. When they built this studio station, they used parts from old ships to save money. Guess which ship's reactor core is currently powering our lovely Set 3? Emma's face went pale. "The Hawthorns." "Bingo." Jennifer brought up the station's construction plans. They didn't just use the reactor. About 40% of Set 3's walls and floors came from the Hawthorne's main science lab. The lights in the library dimmed slightly, and all 3 of them looked up. These power fluctuations had become common over the past day, always stronger in areas where they were discussing the Hawthorne. "What happened to the crew?" Thomas asked, his director's mind already thinking about the story potential. Jennifer pulled up a crew manifest. 68 people, all gone without a trace. The ship's logs were wiped clean. The only thing they found was this. She showed them a final image, a photograph of a message scratched into the Hawthorne's main console. "We are still here." "The same words that appeared on our set yesterday," Emma whispered. The temperature dropped suddenly, and their breath became visible in the cold air. One of Jennifer's screens began to scroll on its own, flying past hundreds of documents before stopping on a personal log entry. "That's Captain Richard Anderson's personal log," Jennifer said, reading quickly. "The day before they vanished. Listen to this. Dr. Lewis thinks she's found a way to bend space itself, not just travel through it, but fold it. The calculations look solid. If she's right, we'll revolutionize space travel. First test is tomorrow. God, I hope this works." A noise made them all jump. One of the screens had cracked, a spider web pattern spreading across its surface. In the reflection, just for a moment, they saw a face looking back at them. It was an older man in a captain's uniform, his eyes desperate and sad. "TOR," Thomas called out. "Scan the library for life signs." "I detect 3 human life signs," the AI responded. "However, there are unusual energy patterns consistent with those we observed in Set 3. Director Reynolds, I should inform you that similar energy signatures are now being detected in any area containing materials from the U.S. Hawthorne." Jennifer quickly pulled up the station's construction records again. "Oh no." "What is it?" Emma asked. "The Hawthorne's parts. They're not just in Set 3. They used pieces of that ship throughout the entire station. The reactor core is just the biggest part. There are components in the life support systems, the hulls, even." She stopped as the realization hit her, even in the main computer core. As if in response, every screen in the library lit up with the same image, a test report from the Hawthorne's last day. At the top was Dr. Lewis's hypothesis. Human consciousness may be the key to quantum manipulation. The mind itself could be used to fold space-time. The screens went dark, then displayed a new message. "Now you understand. We folded space. We folded ourselves. We cannot unfold." Thomas looked at the others. "Get everyone together in the main conference room. All cast, all crew. If these people have been trapped here since 2157, and they found a way to communicate." He paused, his mind racing with possibilities. Then maybe we can help them. And maybe they can help us make something more important than just another space movie. The lights flickered one last time, and in the darkness, they heard what sounded like a thank you whispered by dozens of voices at once. Emma Parker sat alone in her dressing room, staring at her tablet's screen. She had been recording herself practicing lines, but when she played back the video, something else was there. Behind her, a woman in an old-style lab coat kept walking through the wall, over and over, like a video stuck on repeat. QORA, play back the station's security feed for the last hour, Emma said. Of course, the AI responded. The tablet showed the security video. The woman in the lab coat wasn't there. Whatever she was, only Emma's personal device could see her. A knock on the door made Emma jump. Come in. Michael Brooks floated through the doorway, looking worried. You need to see this, he said, holding up his own tablet. My lines for tomorrow's scene keep changing by themselves. Emma looked at his script. As they watched, words began to delete and rewrite themselves. The romantic scene they were supposed to film transformed into something else, a conversation about quantum physics and consciousness transfer. The new words, Michael said quietly, they're from a research paper, written by Dr. Alice Lewis of the U.S. Hawthorne. The lights dimmed, and both tablets went black. When they came back on, every device in the room was showing the same thing, old video logs from the Hawthorne. Dr. Lewis's face filled the screens, looking tired but excited. Day 87 of testing, her recorded voice said. We found a way to merge human consciousness with quantum fields. The breakthrough came when we realized consciousness itself is a form of energy that can be. The video cut out, replaced by scrolling lines of computer code. What's happening? Emma asked, backing away from the devices. The door slid open, and Robert Mason, the head of security, rushed in. We've got a situation, he said. Someone's accessing every system on the station, but the access codes they're using. He paused, looking uncomfortable. They belong to the Hawthorne's crew. More devices in the room turned on by themselves. The mirror screen, the digital makeup assistant, even the small cleaning robot in the corner. Each one showed different fragments of the Hawthorne's final days. Tuorare, Robert called out. Shut down all non-essential systems. I cannot. Tuore responded, her voice sounding different, like multiple voices speaking at once. They are already part of me. They have been since the station was built. I see them. I feel them. They are in every circuit, every piece of the Hawthorne we used. The room's temperature dropped suddenly. On Emma's tablet, a message appeared. We tried to warn them. The experiment worked too well. We didn't die. We became something else. Michael's tablet began playing a video, security footage from the Hawthorne's last day. They watched as the crew gathered around a large machine. There was a flash of light, and then the crew seemed to dissolve, their bodies becoming transparent before disappearing completely. They're not ghosts, Robert said, realization dawning on his face. They're digital, Emma finished. Somehow, when their experiment went wrong, they became energy, information, and now they're in our computers. The screens all changed again, showing a simple message. Help us tell our story. Then Ciore spoke again, but this time they could hear the other voices mixed with hers. Dozens of them, the voices of the Hawthorne's crew. We have watched for so long. Your movie, your cameras, your equipment, they give us a way to be seen again, to be heard. Emma looked at Michael, then at Robert. She thought about Thomas and his dream of making movie history. Maybe, she said slowly, that's exactly what we should do. Not just make a space movie, but tell the true story of the Hawthorne. All the screens in the room flickered in unison, and they felt a wave of what seemed like approval wash over them. The digital entities that had once been the Hawthorne's crew had waited decades for someone to understand. Now, finally, they had found their audience. Robert's security tablet beeped. Director Reynolds is calling an emergency meeting. He wants everyone in the main hall in 10 minutes. He looked at the screens, still showing traces of the Hawthorne's crew. I think it's time we introduced our new cast members. Dr. Amanda Foster paced in front of the large screen in the main hall, her shoes making soft clicking sounds against the floor where the artificial gravity was strongest. The entire cast and crew watched her, their faces showing a mix of fear and curiosity. The screen behind her displayed complex quantum equations, but she knew she had to explain this in simple terms. Think of it this way, she said, picking up a clear plastic cup of water. This water is like normal space-time. We exist in it, move through it. She then took out a small device from her pocket. The Hawthorne's quantum drive was designed to fold space, like this. She pressed a button, and a small force field appeared, bending the water in the cup into an impossible shape. But they made a mistake. Thomas Reynolds asked from the front row. Not exactly. Amanda set down the cup. They succeeded. Too well, in fact. Dr. Lewis' theory was right. Human consciousness could be used to fold space-time. But she didn't realize that consciousness itself could be folded. The lights dimmed slightly, and everyone looked up. These power fluctuations had become familiar now, a sign that the Hawthorne's crew was listening. When they activated the drive, Amanda continued, they didn't just fold space. They folded themselves. Their consciousness, their very beings, were transformed into quantum data. They became entangled with their ship's systems. Emma Parker raised her hand. But what about their bodies? Gone. Converted to energy. But their minds survived, preserved in the quantum fields generated by the drive. Amanda brought up a new image on the screen. A scan of the station's power systems. When we built this station using parts from the Hawthorne, we brought them with us. They're not ghosts haunting us. They're more like people trapped in a computer, but the computer is reality itself. Michael Brooks stood up. The woman I saw yesterday, Lieutenant Thompson. She tried to explain something like this. She said they were between the lines of real. Cora's voice came through the speakers, but it was different now. They had all learned to recognize when the AI was blending with the Hawthorne's crew. We exist in the quantum layer beneath normal space-time. We can see you, reach out sometimes, but we cannot fully cross over. But they're getting stronger, Amanda said. Our equipment, our cameras, the creative energy of what we're doing up here, it's giving them more ways to interact. The boundary between their quantum existence and our physical one is getting thinner. The screen changed suddenly, showing Dr. Lewis's face. She looked young, excited, and very alive despite having been quantum data for decades. The film equipment, her voice said through Kyorei's speakers, it's like a bridge. When you record, when you create, you're manipulating reality in tiny ways. We can use that, ride those waves of change to communicate. Thomas stood up, his director's mind clearly racing with possibilities. So if we gave you access to our equipment, let you be part of the film. We could tell our story, Dr. Lewis said. The true story of what happened on the Hawthorne. And maybe, with your help, we could find a way to stabilize ourselves, to exist more fully in your world. Amanda nodded. It's possible. The quantum fields they exist in, they're not so different from the digital data we use to make movies. If we could find a way to bridge that gap, we could save them, Jennifer Walsh said from her seat, or at least give them a voice. The lights in the room brightened, and on every screen, every tablet, every device, the same message appeared. Let us show you what really happened. Let us be part of your story. Thomas looked around the room at his cast and crew. Well, he said with a small smile, I wanted to make movie history. I just didn't expect to solve a 70-year-old quantum physics mystery in the process. He turned to the nearest camera. Dr. Lewis, crew of the Hawthorne, welcome to the cast. The entire station hummed with energy, as if 68 souls were sighing in relief at once. After decades of waiting, they had finally found their way to be heard. The real question was, What would they show the world once the cameras started rolling? Michael Brooks stood alone on set 3, running through his lines for the next scene. The set was designed to look like a spaceship's control room, with screens and control panels salvaged from various old ships, including the Hawthorne. The irony wasn't lost on him. Scene 47, take 1, he said to himself, looking at his script. But before he could start his lines, all the screens on the set lit up at once. The temperature dropped, and Michael felt a strange tingling sensation throughout his body. "Hello, Michael Brooks," a woman's voice said behind him. He turned around slowly. There she was, Lieutenant Maria Thompson of the U.S. Hawthorne. Unlike the fuzzy images they'd seen before, she looked solid now, almost real. She wore an old-style science officer's uniform, and her red hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her edges flickered slightly, like a video having trouble staying in focus. "You're much clearer than before," Michael said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The quantum field is stronger here," Maria explained, gesturing to the equipment around them. "All these cameras, these monitors, they help us take shape." She walked toward him, her feet not quite touching the floor. "But you, Michael, you're special. Your brainwaves, they match the quantum frequency we exist on. You're like a living antenna." Michael felt the tingling sensation grow stronger. "Is that why I can see you so clearly?" "Yes, and why we chose you." Maria smiled. "We need your help. All of us, the whole crew. We need to show people what really happened on the Hawthorne." The air around them shimmered, and suddenly the set was gone. Michael found himself standing on the bridge of the U.S. Hawthorne, but everything looked slightly transparent, like a very detailed hologram. "This is a memory," Maria said. "The day of the accident. Watch." Michael saw the crew at their stations. Dr. Lewis stood by a large machine that hummed with strange energy. Captain Anderson was giving a speech about making history. Everyone looked excited, nervous, proud. "We thought we were ready," Maria continued. "The math worked perfectly in all our tests. We were going to revolutionize space travel." Her voice grew sad. "We didn't understand what we were really doing." The memory shifted, and Michael watched as Dr. Lewis activated the quantum drive. There was a flash of beautiful, impossible colors. The crew began to glow, their bodies becoming transparent. But instead of screaming or panicking, they looked amazed. "It didn't hurt," Maria said softly. "We just changed, became something else, but we couldn't change back." The memory faded, and they were back on set 3. Michael's head was spinning with everything he'd seen. "Why show me this?" "Because you can help us tell the truth. Your movie, it can be more than fiction. Through you, through your performance, we can show the world what really happened. Not a ghost story, but a story about human beings who touched the edge of what's possible and became something new." Michael nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "Let us in," Maria said. "Not just me, all of us. We can share our memories, our experiences. When you act, let us be part of it. Let us show the world through your eyes." The lights flickered, and Michael felt the presence of others, dozens of minds, all reaching out. The entire crew of the Hawthorne, waiting to be heard. "It might be dangerous," Maria warned. "No one has ever tried to channel quantum consciousness before." Michael thought about all the acting roles he'd played in his career. None of them mattered as much as this. "I'll do it," he said, "for all of you." Maria smiled, and for a moment, she looked completely solid. "Thank you," she said. Then she turned to the nearest camera. "Ready when you are, Director Reynolds. Let's make history." Again. The camera's light turned on by itself, and in its lens, Michael could see both worlds at once. The movie set and the quantum echo of the Hawthorne, ready to blend into one extraordinary story. The production team gathered around the main viewing screen in the control room, watching the playback of yesterday's filming. Thomas Reynolds leaned forward in his chair, his eyes wide with amazement. On the screen, Michael Brooks wasn't just acting anymore. He was transforming. As they watched, Michael's face shifted between his own and Captain Anderson's. His voice changed too, moving smoothly between his character's lines and the real captain's memories. The effect was unlike anything they'd ever seen in movies before. "This is incredible," Emma Parker said, watching her co-star's performance. "How does it feel, Michael?" Michael sat quietly in the corner, looking tired but happy. "Strange, but good. It's like having a dream, but you're wide awake. They're so careful with me, so gentle when they share their memories." Dr. Amanda Foster stood next to a device she built to measure the quantum energy during filming. "The readings are off the charts," she said. "When they merge with Michael, it creates a perfect bridge between their quantum state and our reality." Thomas turned to his special effects team. "Can we capture this? Make it visible for everyone to see." The lead effects artist, David Miller, nodded excitedly. "We've modified the cameras to detect quantum energy patterns. Watch this." He pressed a few buttons, and the footage changed. Now they could see waves of beautiful light surrounding Michael whenever the Hawthorne's crew merged with him. "Dr. Lewis wants to try something bigger," Jennifer Walsh said, looking up from her tablet where she'd been communicating with the quantum crew. "She thinks we can capture their whole story, not just pieces." Cora's voice came through the speakers, but it was Dr. Lewis speaking through the AI. "If we combine your filming equipment with the quantum field generators, we could recreate entire scenes from the Hawthorne. Show everyone exactly what happened." Thomas looked around at his crew. "This isn't just a movie anymore, is it? We're making history here. Real history." Emma raised her hand. "I want to help too. Maria told me some of the crew might be able to merge with me like they do with Michael. We could show more perspectives, tell more of their stories." The lights dimmed, and several crew members appeared around the room, not just as faint images now, but as clear as holograms. Dr. Lewis stood in the center, her form steady and strong. "We've been practicing," she said, her voice coming through both Kiora and the air itself. "Learning to use your equipment, your energy. With your help, we can make ourselves seen and heard properly for the first time in decades." Thomas stood up, walking through the room filled with both his living crew and the quantum echoes of the Hawthorne's team. "Then let's do this right. We'll tell your story exactly as it happened. No Hollywood changes, no made-up drama. The truth is amazing enough." The room hummed with energy as more of the Hawthorne's crew appeared. They began sharing their stories. Engineers explaining how they built the quantum drive, scientists describing their discoveries, crew members talking about their last day as physical beings. "Tomorrow," Thomas announced, "we start filming the real story. The accident, the transformation, everything. Michael, Emma, you'll work with the crew to channel their memories. Dr. Foster will monitor the quantum fields to keep everyone safe. The rest of you, get ready for the most unusual shoot of your lives." Dr. Lewis smiled, her form glowing brighter. 70 years we've waited to tell our story, to show the world that we didn't die. We evolved. Through your film, people will finally understand." As the production team began preparing for the next day's shoot, the quantum crew merged with the cameras and computers, learning to use them, becoming part of the filmmaking process itself. They weren't just subjects of the documentary anymore. They were helping to create it. Michael watched them work, feeling their excitement and hope through the quantum connection they now shared. Tomorrow, they would begin showing the world a truth stranger and more beautiful than any fiction they could have written. Jennifer Walsh couldn't sleep. She sat in the station's observation room, staring at the earth below while her tablet played back footage from their latest filming session. On the screen, Michael Brooks was channeling Captain Anderson's final moments as a physical being. The performance was beautiful, powerful, and deeply disturbing. "You're troubled," a voice said. Jennifer turned to see Lieutenant Maria Thompson's quantum form sitting beside her, glowing softly in the dim light. "We're using you," Jennifer said quietly, "making entertainment out of your tragedy. Is that what you think we are? A tragedy? Maria's form flickered. We're still alive, Jennifer. Different, yes, but alive. The door opened, and Thomas Reynolds floated in. He wasn't surprised to see Jennifer talking with one of the quantum crew anymore. It had become common on the station. "Emergency meeting in 10 minutes, he said. "The studio executives on Earth just saw our first footage." In the main conference room, the mood was tense. The large screen showed several serious-looking executives in their Earth offices, while the room itself was filled with both physical and quantum crew members. "This isn't what we agreed to film," the lead executive, Mr. Peterson, said firmly. "We approved a space thriller, not a quantum physics documentary." "But this is real," Thomas argued. "We have actual proof of human consciousness surviving in a quantum state. This could change everything we know about human existence." "It's also dangerous." Jennifer spoke up, surprising herself. "We're asking Michael and Emma to merge their consciousness with quantum beings. We don't know the long-term effects." Dr. Lewis appeared next to Thomas, her quantum form strong and clear. "We would never harm them. We've waited decades to share our story, but not at the cost of anyone's safety." Robert Mason, the head of security, stood up. "There's another concern. The Hawthorne's quantum drive research was classified. If we release this footage, we'll be revealing government secrets. Secrets from 70 years ago." Emma protested. "The world deserves to know the truth." The room erupted in argument. Physical and quantum crew members took sides, debating the ethics of their project. Should they continue making their documentary? Go back to their original movie script? Help the Hawthorne's crew find a way to move on? Michael Brooks watched silently until he couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Stop," he shouted, standing up. Everyone fell silent as they felt the quantum energy surge around him. "Ask them. Ask the crew what they want. They're not our special effects. They're not our government secret. They're people, and this is their story." The quantum crew gathered in the center of the room, their forms merging and separating as they communicated among themselves. Finally, Captain Anderson stepped forward, his quantum form as commanding as it must have been in life. "We chose to share our story with you," he said, his voice carrying through Core's speakers. "Not for entertainment, not for profit, but because humanity needs to know what's possible. We touched the edge of something incredible. And yes, it changed us. But change isn't always a tragedy." Dr. Foster, who had been quietly taking readings, suddenly looked up from her instruments. "There's something else," she said. "The more we film, the more stable their quantum patterns become. We're not just telling their story. We're helping them exist more fully in our reality." Jennifer thought about all the footage they'd shot, all the memories they'd recorded. "Maybe," she said slowly, "that's the real ethical question. Not whether we should tell their story, but what responsibility we have to help them find a new way to live." The executives on the screen looked uncomfortable, but Thomas stood firm. "I'll resign if I have to," he said, "but I won't stop this project. The crew of the Hawthorne trusted us with their story. We owe them the chance to tell it." As the debate continued, Jennifer watched the quantum crew, scientists, engineers, officers, all of them waiting to see if their chance to be heard would be taken away again. She made her decision. Whatever happened next, she would fight to help them tell their truth. Some stories were too important to leave untold. The day of the final shoot arrived. The entire station hummed with energy, both electrical and quantum. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in the middle of set 3, surrounded by specialized equipment she and the Hawthorne's engineers had built together. The air sparkled with tiny points of light, like stars brought indoors. "All readings are stable," she announced, checking her instruments. "The quantum field is stronger than ever." Thomas Reynolds looked around at his assembled cast and crew. Michael Brooks and Emma Parker stood ready, their bodies already glowing slightly from their connection to the quantum crew. The rest of the production team waited at their stations, both excited and nervous about what was about to happen. "Dr. Lewis," Thomas called out, Are you and your crew ready? The quantum physicist appeared in the center of the set, clearer than ever before. Behind her, the entire crew of the Hawthorne took shape, 68 souls, all glowing with their own inner light. "We're ready," Dr. Lewis said. "What we're about to attempt, it's never been done before. The quantum energy we've built up through filming, combined with your equipment, and the station's power, it should let us stabilize our forms completely." Jennifer Walsh, watching from behind the cameras, held her breath. Over the past weeks, she had helped document every step of this journey. Now she was about to witness its end, or maybe its true beginning. "Start the sequence," Thomas ordered. Dr. Foster activated her equipment. The quantum field generators hummed to life, creating a visible wave of energy that rippled through the air. The cameras rolled, their specially modified lenses capturing every detail of what was about to happen. Michael and Emma stepped forward, opening themselves to the quantum crew's consciousness. But this time was different. Instead of the crew merging with them, they stayed separate, using the actors' energy as an anchor while Dr. Foster's machines stabilized their forms. "It's working," Dr. Foster said, watching her readings. "Their quantum patterns are aligning with our reality." The air filled with swirling lights as the crew of the Hawthorne began to change. Their forms became more solid, more real. Captain Anderson reached out and touched a control panel. His hand didn't pass through it. "We have a choice to make," Dr. Lewis announced, her voice strong and clear. "The quantum field is stable enough now. We can either use it to maintain permanent forms in your reality, or, Thomas asked, "or we can use this moment, this perfect alignment of energies, to finally move on, to see what lies beyond the quantum realm." She smiled. "Some of us want to stay, to help humanity understand what we discovered. Others are ready for their next journey." One by one, the crew members made their choices. 23 of them, including Dr. Lewis, chose to stay, their forms becoming permanently solid through the quantum field generators. They would remain as part of the station's crew, bridges between normal space and the quantum realm. The others gathered together one last time. Captain Anderson stepped forward, now looking as real as any living person. "Thank you," he said to Thomas and his crew, "for letting us tell our story, for helping us find our way home, whatever home means for each of us." The air shimmered with color. Those who had chosen to move on began to glow brighter, their forms shifting into pure energy. There was no sadness in their transformation this time, only peace and purpose. In a flash of beautiful light, they were gone, not trapped between dimensions anymore, but free to discover what waited beyond. "Cut," Thomas said softly. "That's a wrap." Dr. Lewis, now permanently part of their reality, walked over to the camera and watched the footage play back. "The world won't be the same after they see this," she said. "That's what we do in movies," Thomas replied with a smile. "We change the world, one story at a time." As the crew began to celebrate, Jennifer looked out the station's window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the universe had just become a much bigger, stranger, and more wonderful place. Their movie wasn't just a story anymore. It was proof that human consciousness could transcend the boundaries of reality itself. And this was only the beginning.